Well, welcome to the Old Classic Car channel, and this video is a collection of 200 photographs featuring solely classic British cars of the 1970s. You'll find on this channel videos for 50s cars and 60s cars, but this one looks solely at cars that were either registered in or available for sale in the 1970s. One or two may date to the late 1960s or the early 1980s, but they're all of a type that were available in that particular decade. You'll find all the usual favourites, the Austins, the Triumph Dolomites, Morris Minors, various BL cars, Austin 1300s, Ford Escorts, Granadas, Scimitars and so on, and one or two rarities sprinkled in there too, so please make yourself comfortable. It's about 20 minutes long, this video, and I do have a bit of a commentary, but you can always turn that down if you wish. But yes, if 1970s British cars are your thing, then hopefully there'll be something here of interest to you. I'd love your comments below the video if there's any of these cars that you particularly remember fondly or otherwise. The 1970s wasn't a great era for quality control when it came to British cars, so I'd love to read your comments in the section below. Okay, well, we begin this collection of 1970s British cars with a Mk4 Mini from 1977, followed by a GT6 Mk3, which is a 72 example. We've got a rear view of a nice 1977 Austin Maxi. You don't see these too often now. And then here's a Mk3 Ford Cortina resting in a scrapyard many years ago. It's not there anymore, I'm afraid. And then we've got a Scimitar SE5A. This was an experimental car based on the AD016, the Morris Austin 1100. This is at Gaydon. And we've got a Jensen Interceptor at Cholmondeley Castle, this one from 1974. It's a Vauxhall Victor Estate. A Triumph TR7 rally car, done up in the Leyland colours for the Lombard RAC Rally. And then we've got a Vauxhall Cavalier Mk1. A Bristol 411 LLB 95P. And down at the Haynes Museum we've got an Aston Martin Lagonda. These are a pretty wild car of the sort of 70s and early 80s. And we've got a Dolomite, quite a late example. This was registered in 1980, but it's representative of a car from the 1970s, so it's included here. And then we've got a Mk1 Ford Fiesta Super Sport and a modified Triumph Dolomite Sprint. And this was a reskinned prototype proposal based on the Triumph Dolomite, which never saw light of day. And then we've got an RS2000, one of several that's included in this collection of photographs. And a Lotus Eclat Plus 2, lovely little Lotus from the 1970s. And a Mini Clubman, quite an early example, 1972. This was at the Mini celebration at Gaydon a year or two back. And we've got a Mark II Ford Capri. I think this was a 3-litre example. And a proposal for a fastback version of the Triumph TR7, this example registered in 1978. Now we're going back a bit earlier in the 70s in the Vauxhall Viscount, which I think was a 3.3 litre car, and a Reliant Kitten, much modified. Got a very original Mini, 1979 example, Mk4 I think that'll be. And we've got a Mk1 Ford Escort, 1974 example, quite late. The Vauxhall Victor FD, I think it is, S-Reg, so that'll be a 77, it could be an FE. And then we've got a Vauxhall Magnum Coupe, I believe, someone will correct me I'm sure, and a Triumph TR8. The Rover P5B Saloon, the V8. And a Sunbeam Vogue, based on the Hillman Hunter shape. And this is the Wolseley 1822, the first of the Wedge Princesses, made for a very short period of time only. And then we've got an Aston Martin DBS over at Cholmondeley Castle, and a sectioned Austin Allegro down in the reserve collection at Gaydon, the British Motor Museum. And we have an XJ Coupe, 6-cylinder XJC, and a Morris 1800 Mark II, and the old Land Crab, again at Gaydon. Another Triumph GT6 Mk3. Some of these had the Rotaflex rear suspension, and others, the later ones, were just a swing spring. And we've got a fastback Sunbeam Rapier. This was at the Haynes Museum, if I remember right. And at Tatton Park, a 2-door Ford Cortina Mk3 GT. And at Cholmondeley, a collection of Triumph Stags. one of the last Morris Minor Travellers on a J-Reg for 1970. I think they produced them until 1971. And we've got a fastback Ford Granada Mk1 Coupe and the Allegro Vanden Plas. Rally prepared Mark II Ford Escort, classic 1970s rally car, and an early 1970s Land Rover Series 3. This one's a 1971 registered example, and then a rally prepared Vauxhall Chevette, very much a common sight in the 1970s, and an immaculate Austin 1300 GT, probably the nicest one I've seen, this example, registered in 72, and then another slopey front droop snoot Ford RS, and another Dolomite, one of several to feature in this video of 1970s British cars, and a Lotus Europa, one of its later wedgy sisters alongside. And here we've got a Clan Crusader, which was based on Hillman Imp running gear. And this was the Austin Apache, which was an Australia market version of the Austin and Morris 1100, and a Lotus Elan Plus 2 convertible. Is that a later conversion, or was that a factory car? Very much a work in progress Triumph 2000 Mark II, and a proposed estate car version of the Rover SD1, which never made it into production. We've got a Daimler version of the XJ Series 1 here. This is an L-Reg 1972 car, and then a classic Range Rover that was used on the Trans-Americas expedition in 1971 and 72. And here's a Series 3 V12 E-Type with a leaper on the bonnet, not something I've ever seen before. This Mini was used for testing various safety proposals in the 1970s with British Leyland. And we've got an Aston Martin V8, this was at Alton Park. And another Escort Mk2 rally car, I particularly like the reflection in this photo in the puddle. And a couple of Triumph TR6s. And this is the Innocenti Mini Cooper 1300. This is an N-Reg 1974 example, and we've got the Quaker State Jaguar E-Type racing car. Another Scimitar SE5A with a later convertible alongside the SE6. This was the Queen Mother's own Jaguar XJ12 Series 1. And a Triumph Dolomite Sprint. L-Reg, so that's 1972, and a Lotus Europa at the British Motor Museum, and a very late Austin Allegro. This is slightly later than the 1970s, but it's just included here because it's very much a 1970s car. And then we've got a Sunbeam Stiletto J-Reg 1970, and just predating this our decade is this Austin Maxi rally car, another classic Range Rover, this one on towing duties, and a two-door Mark II Escort. This is an R-Reg 1976. A brace of old Vauxhalls mouldering away in an open-fronted garage. They're no longer there, before you ask. And a Triumph 2,500 PI rally car with a Lucas fuel injection. This was a Vanden Plas proposal based on the Austin Princess, which never went into production. Here's a front view of the same car with the revised front-end styling. Quite an interesting survivor. And here we have a standard XJ6 4.2 Series 2, and another Ford Escort RS 2000, the slopey front, and the Mini, Mark III Mini, and a Triumph Spitfire 1500 sat above a Midget 1500 when they shared the same engine. And we've got a front view here of a Mini Clubman, quite a late one, 1980 registered, but a very 70s car. A Mark I Escort GT, L-Reg 1972, and an MGB GT with a V8 engine. Now, is that a factory car or is it a Costello conversion? I don't know. And talking of V8s, this is my old Rover P5B V8 Saloon. That was at Gaydon. And here's a Ford Cortina Mark IV. I was at Tatton Park a long time ago. The Mark I Escort rally car. This was at Race Retro. And a Triumph 2500S. So it's a 2.5 litre straight six, but with the twin carburetors, not a fuel injection. Green Triumph Stag, Mark II, I think, if those alloys are original. And we've got a Triumph 2000 Mark II. with a TR6 alongside, and a rubber bumper MGB Roadster, bright yellow, and a posh maxi, one of the last, the 1750 HL V-Reg 1979, and an S registration, so 1977 MG Midget with the 1500cc Triumph engine under the bonnet. And we've got a Rover 2200 SC for single carburettor P6, and a Ginetta down at the Haynes Museum, I think this was, J-Reg 1970, and a Vauxhall Viva HC 2-door from 1972, MGB Roadster K-Reg with an RV8 alongside, a TVR, probably late 1970s, someone will tell me, I'm sure. We've got an M-Reg MGB Roadster taking part in a cavalcade at a classic show, and a very late V12 E-Type, probably the last one. This is in Jaguar's own collection down at Gaydon. A Triumph 2000 TC, the Mark II version, R-Reg 1976. And we've got a Silver Shadow 2 with the rubber bumpers. A Mark II Ford Escort 1.6. One of the RS's, I think. And we've got a base model Vauxhall Viva HC 2-door from 1970, and a brace of Triumph Dolomites rotting away in a scrapyard, and an ambulance conversion based on the classic Range Rover. Not seen one of those before or since. And a very shiny Austin 1300 Estate or Countryman, and a facelifted Ford Capri Mark 1 on the recovery truck. A Triumph 2500 S twin carburettors Mark II. Four-door Ford Cortina Mark III in bright yellow on a very non-bright day. Another Triumph 2000 P6. And a trio of Triumphs, TR8 Stag and the TR6 at the Haynes Museum. I haven't got any other marina photos, I'm afraid, so I had to make do with this Suntour Caravanette. The Van der Plas 1300 M-Reg, so that's a 1973 car. And the Triumph Herald 1360 continued just about until the 1970s. This was used on this example was on Car SOS, the TV series. And we've got a shiny Stag here. No prizes for guessing what this Mark II Escort's used for. And an immaculate Ford Cortina Mark II, probably a 1600E from 1970. A very original looking Jaguar XJ6 Series 2, standard 4-door car. An immaculate 2-door Mark 1 Escort, and not a rally car either. Here we have a Jensen Interceptor with a CV8 behind it. And another Vauxhall Magnum 2.3 at a wet Tatton Park. And we've got a Humber Scepter Mark III based on the Hillman Hunter shape. And a very early Jaguar XJS. This is a 1976 car. Again, this was at Tatton Park on a very wet weekend, and the car it replaced, the V12 E-Type. Mark 1 Ford Capri. And an XJ Coupe, a V12 this time, so an XJ12 or XJ 5.3C as they were badged. Another Bond Bug. If you've got a collection of 1970s car photos, it has to have a Bond Bug in there. And we've got a Mini Clubman Estate, also bright orange. This is the Leyland Crompton Electricar from 1970. Now we've got an Allegro Estate with a saloon alongside. Very practical car, and then one of the last Morris Oxford Series 6s on a J-Reg, so 1970, one of the last I would have thought. And we've got a Vauxhall VX 490. An XJ6 Series 1, short wheelbase. A Mark 1 Ford Granada towing a Caravan, face onto a Volvo 164, but we won't talk about that here. And this is Dad's old Van der Plas 1300, lovely little car, low mileage, used to belong to an ex-Rolls-Royce Aero engines gentleman. I've got a midget, a fairly late midget with a 1500 and the rubber bumpers. And a Chevette, slightly later than the 1970s, but very much a 1970s car, so I included it here. Then we've got an R-Reg Rover P6 2200 TC, so twin carburetors. And then we've got a Rolls, possibly another Wraith. with that vinyl Everflex roof. I've got a rubber bumper MGB Roadster T-Reg, so that'll be a 78 car. And a TR6 and a Mark IV Triumph Spitfire, complete with Piccadilly Radio windscreen sticker. And the Chevette, is it an HS? And a Triumph 2000 Mark II Estate. Ooh, very practical car. Got a Mark II Ford Capri. I think this is a 2 litre. We've had a 3 litre already. This is a 2 litre, I think. An Austin 1300. It's on a K, so it's 1971-ish. An MG Midget with an unusual hardtop, possibly a Lenham or an Ashley. I'm sure someone will be able to tell me. And the Hillman Avenger Tiger, a sporty version. Base model Mark II Ford Escort. Very rarely spotted nowadays, not in rallying colours. And an immaculate Mini 1275 GT P-Reg, so that makes it a 1975 car. And the Victor Estate, VX2300 Estate, something of a rarity now. A Magnum 4-door based on the Viva S-Reg, 1977. And the Sunbeam Talbot Lotus, these just about creep into the decade, the 1970s, so we'll include it here. And the Viva Estate, quite a sleek looking car. And the Vauxhall Victor FE, I think it is. The Triumph Spitfire 1500. Mark III Ford Cortina 2-door. And very yellow Lotus Elite 501. Another Allegro Vanden Plas. I don't think they actually call them Allegro, I think they were just the Vanden Plas 1500. And just creeping into the beginning of the 1970s, this Hillman Imp on a J. Austin 1300 GT. You can see the sporty steering wheel that this model came fitted with the standard and the tin hubcaps. Another Aston Martin Lagonda, pure 70s wedge. And the Hillman Hunter, an immaculate example from 1971. Ford Cortina Mark III. I've got a feeling this is an import and very non-standard, or at least non-standard compared to UK market cars. One of the last Morris Minor convertibles in brown. And we've got a Triumph 2.5 litre S Estate, again on the twin Stromberg carburetors, and a Lotus Eclat in the JPS colours. And an Austin 1300 on a K-Reg, that'll be 1971, 4-door saloon. And a Coleman Milne conversion of the Ford Granada Coupe, so a sort of stretch limo version. And the Jensen Healy, powered by Lotus. And the Jensen FF, 4-wheel drive, Ferguson formula. An immaculate late example of the Morris Minor Traveller in maroon, very smart indeed. And there's a Vauxhall FD Victor Ventora. Were called rubber bumper MGB GT. And then 1979 onwards, Vauxhall Astra Mk1, also badged as the Opel Kadett in some markets, and the Mark III GT6, the Triumph Tune twin exhaust. And we've got a Morris 1300 Traveller, the estate car version, another Spitfire 1500 on lowered suspension. Maxi with the vinyl roof, popular upgrade in the 1970s. A very early Allegro 4-door saloon in Harvest Gold, I think that colour is. And also goldish yellow is this Series 3 V12 E-Type Jaguar. The Vauxhall Ventora, this one in white. Slightly earlier than the 1970s, but they were sold in the 70s, so it's included here. And we've got a Triumph Toledo. Gilburn, Wales's finest. Very smart 2-door Vauxhall Viva HC. It's a 1971 car. An immaculate XJ12 Series 2. A Chrysler Avenger Estate, proper rarity. This one a 1976 example. And also from 76 is this Vauxhall VX2300. And we have here a 1978 Daimler version of the XJ Series 2, And another Bond bug, this one exhibiting its entry arrangements. Another Jensen FF, this one bright yellow with a 541 alongside. And the Marcos Mantis, what a strange looking machine. And a Reliant Kitten. And the Fastback Sunbeam Rapier. The Triumph 2000, used for various charity runs, looking at the stickers on the doors. And an side view of an RS 2000 Ford Escort, classic late 1970s, early 80s car. And a Vauxhall Sports Hatch, the Droop Snoot Estate, with an Ashley alongside. And a Mark V Ford Cortina, registered in the early 1980s, but very much a car of the 70s. And we've got another Vauxhall 2300 FE, posh Victor, if you like. And a Rolls-Royce Silver Wraith 2, with the rubber bumpers on a V, so that's a 79 car. And a Ford Cortina Mark III GXL, posh one, 4-door, vinyl roof and shiny wheel trims. Then we've got the Droop Snoot Vauxhall Firenze with a rubber bumper B alongside. And a Daimler XJ6 mouldering away in a scrapyard. And a Mark I Ford Granada. This is a 1973 car. And to round this collection off, a Vauxhall Victor Estate driving away from the camera. Hopefully that was of interest. Thanks for watching.